going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort. And China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols, who controls the underlying standards of the future of money will control the future of money.
Short some situations.
Becky, that's the big question. I have no doubt, none whatsoever, that we are in a raging mania in all assets. I also have no doubt that I don't have a clue when that's going to end. I knew we were in a raging mania in '99, and it kept going on. And if you had shorted the tech stocks, say in mid-'99, you were out of business by the end of the year. But we are still long the stock market. We're not as long, nearly as long as we were 4 or 5 months ago. We're still playing the game. We've shifted a lot of our relative bets into commodities, into interest rates, into the dollar. All those shifts occurred last say August through October, when it became clear to us that the recovery was going. But I will be surprised if we're not out of the stock market by the end of the year.
Hey, Stan, you made some interesting comments both about the dollar and then crypto. But I'm curious about where you stand. You suggested that there'd be, some kid who's going to create this next, crypto blockchain ledger. Does that mean that the cryptos that exist today don't fulfill the requirements that you think that we'd need in the future? What does that say about a Bitcoin or an Ethereum then?
First of all, Andrew, that's a very good question, but I'm a 68-year-old dinosaur who has historically used gold as a replacement for fiat currencies, but I'll take a shot at that. It's going to be very hard to unseat Bitcoin as a store of value asset because it's got a 14-year brand. It's been around long enough, and obviously there's a finite supply. Obviously, Ethereum has the lead in terms of smart contracts, in terms of commerce, that kind of stuff. But yes, my guess would be, and thankfully I'm not betting on this one way or the other, Andrew, but my guess would be, you remember Facebook was not the first social network, it was number 11. Yahoo invented the search engine, and with just a marginally better, speedier technology, we all know what happened with Google versus Yahoo. It's just not probable in my mind that Ethereum is going to be the ultimate winner, and that some kid somewhere, because don't forget, some of the best and brightest of kids coming out of this engineering problem, they're all going into crypto. The quality of the competition that's going to come against the incumbents in this space is going to be brutal. That's why I just think it's too early to call who is going to be the winner in terms of the payment system, commerce, and that kind of stuff, as opposed to store of value, where I think it is going to be tough to unseat Bitcoin.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And guys, I come back with that second video just to make you think. We have Stanley Druckenmiller on CNBC telling all the truth, guys, and we know he's a puppet for the New World Order. We know that the Fed builds up the narratives, so therefore they can start pulling back. The most important piece, guys, he said the United States is going to lose the reserve currency. We don't hear that on mainstream media. We know it's happening behind the scenes. Now, they said China is not going to take over, but we know China, digital yuan, is going to be the new reserve currency backed by the digital SDR. If you have my book, you know I've already explained that to you. And he's constantly blaming the Fed about everything that's going on. And is he telling the truth? Yes, it was the supply of money. The Fed bought 60% of debt issued. But guys, we know it's all planned. We know this is all a narrative. Druckenmiller asks, is chart 5 up? Now, guys, how does he know what chart is up? Because it's all planned. It's all a narrative. It's all a movie. And then lastly, one important thing he stated. He said, what could actually burst this bubble at the end? He said Taiwan. What is Taiwan? That's right. World War III is coming. And lastly, Druckenmiller stated a ledger system would come 5 years ago. How did he know? That's the reason why I have the picture up with George Soros. He's part of the New World Order, the puppets. But we know Ethereum is going to be the winner. Why do we know Ethereum is going to be the winner? Because all the Fed's money is backing it. Now, whether they take that Ethereum technology and move it over to JP Morgan remains to be seen, because we know JP Morgan is building Federal Reserve 2.0 on blockchain. We already see, I've done plenty of videos on that. And he stated this technology is going to come out of MIT, the New World Order School, Michael Saylor. Because we know when it comes to the New World Order, everything is planned out. Y'all have a wonderful day.
I want to get to something that just is amazing to just see it in print from you, and that is when we do lose the status as a world reserve currency, it's going to be hard to find a replacement, because in China, there's a lack of trust in the currency of a foreign dictatorship, obviously, and then Europe's a mess. Your best guess is that a crypto-derived ledger system will be invented, and that will become the reserve currency of the world?
Okay, let's not get too carried away.
I know, but that just sizzles with, sell the steak. Go ahead.
I knew crypto was going to come up in this show. Okay, so it's okay. But look, one of the lines about the dollar we've all heard 100 times the last 10 years is we're the cleanest dirty shirt in the room. There's no alternative. And it's true. That is what has been our strongest case for the dollar. Is Europe is a complete mess. Who's going to trust the Chinese? So it can't be them. And I've been groping, well, how does that resolve itself? Well, you probably don't remember this, Joe, but 5 or 6 years ago, I said that crypto was a solution in search of a problem. And that's why I didn't play crypto the first wave, because we already had the dollar. What do we need crypto for? Well, the problem has been clearly identified. It's Jerome Powell and the rest of the world's central bankers. There's a lack of trust. So sort of groping for an answer for a central case at best guess, and it's hard to make a forecast 3 months from now, much less 15 years from now. I think the most likely replacement would be some kind of ledger system invented by some kids from MIT or Stanford or some other engineering school that hasn't even happened yet, that can replace the dollar worldwide. I don't know what it'll be. I just know if the Fed is forced to monetize the debt, remember, all in the name of raising inflation 30 basis points. I really don't understand why 1.6% inflation with a mandate of price stability is a national tragedy. But okay, if they want to do all this and risk our reserve currency status, risk an asset bubble blowing up, so be it. But I think we ought to at least have a conversation about it.
So let's talk about the dollar. And 85% of the transactions are still done in the dollar. You pointed out in a recent speech that you think we've crossed the Rubicon. Are you comfortable saying what you said there, that for the first time in your career, you think we lose reserve status at some point?
I'm comfortable with it. That's my central case. As you know, Joe, I can change my mind. But yeah, you said that to some extent, the Fed is enabling the fiscal transfers. It's not to some extent. They couldn't be doing this without the Fed. The Fed is monetizing their activity. I mentioned all the QE after vaccine confirmation and retail sales. We've had $850 billion of direct transfers. $575 billion of them came after retail sales were above trend. 575 of the 850 billion. I'm old enough to remember the bond market vigilantes. I used to be one of them. Without the Fed buying, I don't know what the exact number is. I think it's 60% of all the debt issued. The bond markets would be totally rejecting this. So they are enabling this massive expansion in fiscal policy. And the problem is, if you end up getting inflation, and frankly, even if you don't, the debt is going to be so big. You remember I did my entitlement talks 8 or 9 years ago. That's all happened except for one thing, the interest rate level. So we're right now in the crux of when the baby boomers accelerate in terms of getting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that stuff. Right as we're doing that, we just put $6 trillion of new debt on. Again, all enabled by the Fed. These guys could not be doing it. Bond rates would go to a prohibitive level. So my issue here is, in the future, as we go forward, if you look at, do you have chart 5 up there?
Let's get it. I think we can do it. Which one?
It's federal spending, Social Security and major healthcare programs. Federal spending is a percent of GDP. This is the CBO. This is not me. Okay, and they're saying if 10 years go to 4.9%, which is their normalized projection, the interest expense alone will be close to 30% of GDP every year. That's basically what we just spent on the COVID emergency in the last year. There is no way we can afford to have 30% of all government outlays be toward interest expense. So what will happen is the Fed will have to monetize that. When they monetize it, I believe it'll have horrible implications for the dollar. And that's why I said in that speech, yes, that I think it's more likely than not within 15 years we lose reserve currency status.
In the past, you have pointed out that the Fed has stayed a little bit too long, I think after the financial crisis with emergency accommodation. But you seem to have taken your criticism up to a new level, to the point of, if you combine fiscal policy that we're seeing with the monetary policy, it's the scariest combination in the post-World War II period, in your view?
Certainly the most radical policy by a long shot that I've ever seen relative to the economic circumstances. I understand why the Fed and Congress did what they did at the time. I think it was the right decision on a risk-reward basis. But when the facts change, you have to change. And the facts have changed dramatically since then. And yes, I can't find any period in history where monetary and fiscal policy were this out of step with the economic circumstances. Not one.
And you might think that the Fed would be talking about an interest rate hike right now, and you point out it's 32 months. The other statistic that I saw you point out was, and I don't have it right here, but the amount of asset purchases that the Fed has orchestrated just in a very brief period of time, it eclipses what we did through the whole financial crisis for the 7-8 years after the financial crisis. What is that number?
In 6 weeks last spring, we did more QE, more purchase of treasuries than we did the entire time, the 9-year period from 2009 to 2018. Frankly, Joe, I don't have a problem with that. We were in a black hole. No one knew where we were headed. What I have a problem with is the Fed is expected to do $2.5 trillion of QE after vaccine confirmation and after retail sales reach trend and we're above trend. So the black hole didn't occur. That's wonderful. We're all happy, but we're still acting like we're in a black hole. And in fact, the economy accelerating.
By all this easy money. Is there something that could trip that up in a much more the kind of a scary scenario and something that causes not necessarily something we saw in 2008, but more than a slow, steady decline in the dollar and you see inflation go and interest rates start going up. Is there something that could cause a real significant break quickly on the horizon, in your view? We can never say there's not, but...
Well, the most probable and the elephant in the room is inflation becomes so obvious that the Fed has to move. And the longer they wait to move, the bigger the bubble will be and the bigger the reaction. So if they raise rates, say 3 years from now, as opposed to 3 months from now, well, there'll obviously be pain in 3 months. But if they kept the bubble going, it would be a much more dire consequence. If you're talking, that would be the most probable problem, I'd say, is what it always is the Fed gets mugged by reality. Frankly, I think they've already been mugged by reality, but they're ignoring it. But if they start to come around to some of the views I've expressed, that would pop the bubble.
Stan,
the other problem would be, say, Taiwan.
Oh, Taiwan.